Now that we know how to write and make executable our scripts, we are going to play with scripts parameters. So we've had a previous video already go over variables in Bash and how as a command line to define variable, export variables, and do that kind of operations, okay? So I'll refer you back to that video. Now what we're going to learn in this video is how to use variable inside of scripts. So we're going to start by discussing the special variable that are available inside of Bash scripts. So the first special variable that we are going to discuss is, well, it's a generic notation actually for a whole class of special variables. These are the variables that allow you to refer to one of the parameters that was passed to your script. So let me illustrate that with a pragmatic example. This is parameter number 1. So I'm displaying here a little echo statement, and I want to say to the user, okay, I'm going to tell you what is the first parameter that you pass to the script. The notation to identify the variable containing the value of the first parameter is simple, $and 1. So as you guess, if I wanted to display this is a second parameter and third parameter, so parameter number 2, parameter number 3, I would simply use the special variable $1, $2, and $3. Okay, so let's give it a try here to see how this works. So the name of my file, my script, is still my script.sh. Okay, and I'm going to say my first parameter is the word 1, 2, and 3. Okay, and you can see that those notation work. Okay, parameter 1 is 1, parameter 2 is 2, parameter 3 is 3. So everything separated by one or more spaces or tabulation will do the trick. Of course, if I add more parameters passed to my script, okay, well, I chose to use in the code of my script only $1, $2, $3. So 4 and 5 here, the arguments 4 and 5 are stored in special variable $4 and $5. I don't use them. There's no reason for them to show up, okay? And then interestingly, I can do something like this. I can say, okay, what about I do 1, 2, okay? So I only pass two arguments here. 1, the word 1 goes into special variable $1, 2 goes in special variable $2, and then special variable $3 along with $4, $5, $6, $7, and so on and so forth. All of those variables up to $9 contain nothing. So if I try to use them, but the user didn't pass any value for those parameters, also referred to oftentimes as positional parameters, well, you're not going to be able to find anything in those special variables. So that makes sense. One more thing I want to mention here is that there is a $0. Okay, but $0 is a little special. $0 is the special parameter variable that contains the name of the script. And this kind of makes sense. I'm going to explain to you why, okay? When you call a script like that, my script 1, 2, all right? The actual name of the script file is going to be $0, special variable $0. Then the first argument is going to be $1, then $2 up until $9, okay? So $0 here is pretty much the first thing that was used in your command line. And sometimes it is interesting actually to know how your script was called. Let me take it's not actually a fictional example. It has been used in common scripts and commands. Let's say that I want to create a pair of scripts, okay? One script that, I don't know, turns on a feature, on my system, start a web server, and one script that turns it off. Well, I could write two separate scripts, or I could, make it so that I can pass an option, my script, blah, 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 on to turn on the service and off to turn it off, okay? But I could also have one single script, sorry, and create a link, a symbolic link on that script. So one of the script would be called my script-on, okay, or my script on.sh, and the other will be called my script off.sh. And depending on which name I use to execute the same script, I want two different behavior. Well, this is how you would be able to implement something like that, okay? The first step is for you to be able, from within the inside of your script, to be able to tell what is the name that was used to invoke your script. So keep in mind, you can have a ton of different links on the same file in a Linux file system, so you can have a ton of different names for your script, and you can use that as part of the logic of execution of your script. If you invoke me with that name, I'm going to do this. If you invoke me with that other name, I will do something different. Okay, so there is a little bit of an anecdote / story behind $0. I'm kind of introducing this material before we even started playing with if statement and stuff like that, but it makes sense to introduce it now, at least as an anecdote, so that you know that $0 is actually serving a purpose. What else do we have? Well, we have other special variable available inside of any bash script, okay? One of them tells us how many arguments were passed. You passed, and the syntax is $, like any variable. $pound are parameters. I'm going to keep the same vocabulary to this script. Okay, so again, that's one of those special variables. Let me save and execute. So if I execute with, again, 1, 2 parameters, so it displays the name of the script always. Parameter 1 is 1, parameter 2 is 2, there's no parameter 3, and it tells me you have passed 2 parameters to the script. So once we get into the syntax for for loops and stuff like that in bash scripting, you're going to be able to use this, obviously, to create a loop that is going to say, well, no matter how many parameters you pass to me, I'm going to consider them, for example, one after the other, or apply a command on each of them, and so on and so forth. Okay? So now, in some cases, you want all of your parameters, right, to be displayed at the same time, or to be used, pass as a parameter to a command. So let's say that we want to do, what could we do that's interesting here? Well, let's say that we work with 2 parameters, okay, and we are going to say in the script that we display what about detailed information on each of the parameters? So we are going to assume that the 2 parameters that are given to me are file names, okay? And I'm going to display some information about those files. So I'm going to do ls-l $1, ls-l $2, okay? And I'm going to display here, I'm going to use those equal statement. I'm going to be a little lazy. Okay, so I'm going to say this is parameter 1 that you gave me, and here's information about that file. This is parameter 2, and here's the information about that file. So I'm going to erase all this, save it, and run it. So far I've not been doing, anything new, except that obviously if I give, names that do not exist, it's going to tell me, hey, I cannot find that file. So let's give the name of a folder data1, a folder data2. There we go. So here are the contents of folder data1, here are the contents of folder data2, okay? Now, if I wanted to say, for example, this was information about these files, so files, a folder, it's the same thing really. I have a special notation here that is $@. And $@ is going to be substituted. It's a special variable that contains all of the arguments that you passed to your script. So that's going to give me a nice little summary here that tells me, okay, you called me with data1, data2. This was information about these files, data1, data2, okay? So you can get access to each of the argument separately, including the special argument $0, which is the name of the script. You can also get access to all of the arguments starting with $1 that were passed to your script, okay? No problem. And so we looked at the number of arguments, we looked at each of the positional arguments, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then we looked at accessing the content of all of them. So this should get you started in writing scripts that are capable to actually get data from the user as you call them from the command line, and use this data to apply different commands, for example, to different piece of data. And everything else that we studied about variable, for example, how to make a variable here, first file equal $1, okay, all of this still holds true. Okay, so in this example, I am defining two variables, one named first file, one named second file. I assign the first argument to first file, the second argument to second file, and from then on, I can in my script, just refer to things as first file, okay, and then second file. This is going to do exactly the same type of job here. All right, I'm going to separate everything with some dash 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 so that we can see clearly the output of all of the different commands. Okay, so in this case I am assigning to a variable the first parameter, to another variable the second parameter, and I'm using those variables that I defined afterward in my script. Okay, so ls-l, what did I use here? Data1, data2, so I have here the content of ls-l. I'm going to do a ls here just without dash l to make it a little more compact. Okay, so this is the ls in my data1 folder, this is the ls in my data2 folder, and something is odd here. Oh yes, what is odd here is that first here is missing a r. Therefore, what happened, it's actually an interesting example. What happened when I did FIST file instead of FIRST file is I didn't get an error. The shell is never going to tell you, hey, you're using a variable that was not defined. It's going to look for that variable and it's not going to find it, and so it's going to assume that, well, this variable contains nothing. So the dollar misspelled name of variable is going to lead to nothing, which is going to result in the ls being executed in the current working directory. Now that I have the actual correct spelling here, okay, for the variable, now it's going to find inside this variable first file whatever I pass as first argument, and it's going to be able to do ls inside of it. So let me save and show you that on the same screen. There we go. So now we have a ls of the first argument, which is data1, which is a folder containing those three files, and then we have a ls of the second argument, which is data2, which is a folder containing those three files. Okay, so unintended little error there, but still interesting to show you what happened when you refer a variable that doesn't actually exist. And there you go. We have the little starting kit here on how to refer and work with parameters in a bash script.